misunderstanding. I think there's a lot of overemphasis on the negative, and I think that the idea that just TRIPS itself is somehow going to change the conditions in the market for better or for worse, for those of you who I don't convince that this is actually a good thing. In fact, if countries like Jordan do nothing except what is required of them under the WTO, there'll be nothing, there'll be no change until well into the 21st century. And I think that that's a cost that countries such as Jordan quite simply can't bear. It's an unacceptable cost. And it's not my intention here to get too much into biotechnology, but there are some exemptions from biotechnology protection that I think are negative. But that provision will be reviewed in 1999. Does that focus all right? Yeah. So, what are the benefits of patents? Obviously, they stimulate invention. Not to repeat myself, but as I said earlier, without patent protection, there quite simply would be no pharmaceutical industry, period. As far as new medicines are concerned, we'd still be chewing on leaves, I think. It encourages investment. It encourages technology transfer. For countries such as Jordan, I think that's very important because you have a pharmaceutical industry here. And you're seeking to create the conditions to make that industry better. I know it's one of the most successful exporting industries you have in this country, if my information is correct. Pharmaceutical exports alone account for 10% of all Jordanian exports. Proper intellectual property protection can help the local industry create licensing and other joint venture agreements with the multinational companies. It can give them exclusive access to newer medicines. It can help upgrade their production facilities. It can increase economic activity because there are a number of health conditions and things like that that affect this region more than they affect North America or Europe. And it can encourage companies to get into agreements with local companies and local institutes to do clinical trials and other kinds of advanced testing and clinical work here in Jordan. Why not? That provides employment for, in fact, some of the best educated and smartest people in your country. People with advanced degrees in medicine, in pharmacy, in biology, in chemistry. It gives work to doctors, to nurses, to laboratories. All that is a benefit of increased economic activity, but one of the preconditions of that, it's not the only one to be sure, but an important one, is intellectual property protection, because who can undertake that kind of investment? Who can generate that information, some of which is patented technology, some of which is trade secret? If after you're done, you say, well, here was a molecule, we didn't know it would work against this disease, but now we found out it does, and this will be a benefit to our people, and 15 other companies copy it immediately. How can, obviously you can't justify that. What are some of the costs of copying? We estimate the American industry loses about $5 billion a year. So there's money involved, in case you didn't know. We believe that in areas where there is lack of intellectual property protection, we have found that there's a correlation between poor quality products circulating in the market, including counterfeits. I think you should all be very glad, as far as I know, counterfeiting is not a major problem in Jordan, but it is in many other markets. And it's a very, very serious matter. In terms of copyright protection, it's a very important issue, but nobody ever died from watching a poor quality Arnold Schwarzenegger film, no matter how many people die in the movie itself. But people do die from counterfeit and poor quality pharmaceuticals. Children die. People die in the hospital. People get an IV solution of an antibiotic antibiotic that's not bioequivalent, and they don't get well, it's a very serious problem. And we find that where poor quality copies circulate in the marketplace, that often the demand for the legitimate product tends to disappear even because doctors will say, well, I tried that, it didn't work, so I'm just not going to use it anymore. So there's a tremendous cost to the health system overall because important, effective new therapies, new medicines simply disappear from the healthcare system. So there's an old law in economics that comes from the 16th century that says bad money drives out good. Well, that law applies to medicines as well. Bad medicine drives good medicine out of the market. We have some very important issues here in the region. That's why I'm here. Thank you again for inviting me. Some of the major countries in the region where we have very significant issues, let me say, from unauthorized copying of pharmaceuticals include Turkey, include Egypt, include Jordan, include UAE, from where I just came last night. There's no pharmaceutical patent protection in any of these markets. And the problem is, at least in Jordan, it's growing. And I hope to use my time here to address that, not only in this forum, but I'll be having some private meetings as well. I'd like to say that we're making progress in the region because of our efforts. Governments in many of these countries are realizing we shouldn't change our intellectual property regime because the American government is unhappy with us or because the pharmaceutical industry is unhappy with us. We should do it for our own sake. And I'm pleased to say that in Turkey, although Turkey is another country like Jordan that could take the full 10 years before they change their law, they just issued a decree. It was actually the last official act of the former government, because as you know, the coalition fell apart a week and a half ago. They changed the decree and they said, we will make sure that we have full protection for pharmaceutical patents by not later than 1999. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll wait till 1999. Obviously, I'll be working on that to encourage them to do it more quickly. But they recognize it's in their interest. They say, why should we wait 10 years? Let's do it as quickly as we can. In Egypt, I'd like to discuss this earlier, and later, excuse me, and I'll be going to Egypt when I leave Amman on Sunday. We just had a conference on intellectual property protection and technology transfer at the beginning of September. And the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Agriculture said that it's an absolute priority to change the legal system for patents. And I'm quoting here from the remarks he made at the conference, we must change the legal system for patents. We must think about the next phase, a new IPR law. Our Egyptian researchers are asking us all the time. We have new varieties of plants. We have new products that we are inventing. But we can't get protection for them, and so we can't develop them. This is in Egypt. And I would like you to think about those of you who are here from Jordan. Obviously, it's a fascinating time in this region. There is finally progress on the peace. His Majesty King Hussein, I believe, is in Washington today. There will be new investment coming to this region. There will be regional economic integration, and I think there are great opportunities in the biomedical field. But where is it going to go? Is it going to go to Egypt? Maybe. It'll go to Israel, probably. Will it come to Jordan?